Welcome back, everyone. We've got another exciting video. This one's going to be actually short this week. We are going to be talking about limiting and I already lost it.
We're going to talk about how to put a limit on the number of multiple copies you can add to a bibliographic record by pressing the Add Multiple Copies button.
There we go. Okay. Before we do that, two things. Just a reminder, we are gearing up for our conference that's coming up in September 20th through the 23rd, which is going to be in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And we are about ready to unleash the rough schedule and then take registrations for that. So hopefully by the time you see this video, all that will be in place. So we hope to see most of you and more there at the conference. So be ready for that. And now let's talk about Koha-US.
This video is sponsored by Koha-US, your place to look for all things Koha. Whether you're just starting out with Koha or you've been with Koha for a while, Koha-US is a great place to find resources, learn new tips and techniques, or connect with other users and libraries. Koha-US provides excellent information, both original and curated from around the internet, including the terrific Every Other Day training videos. You will also find several special interest groups to connect with, as well as our general monthly meeting where we gather to talk about the latest Koha news. You should also check out the Koha-US annual conference, held at various locations around the US. This is a great opportunity to meet with other users face-to-face, and build your Koha network, as well as new friendships. And of course, don't forget about the great presentations. Koha-US is also actively involved in the Koha community by contributing towards new developments. If you are interested in contributing towards Koha-US funded developments, join the Koha-US membership. Your annual membership builds the funds to sponsor new developments in the community, and as a member, you also help shape Koha-US with your membership votes, and receive a discount on the annual conference. You can also contribute towards developments through a direct donation, or by purchasing some great Koha-US merchandise through our Threadless account. Visit us at koha-us.org to find out more.
All right, George, this is yours, so take it away.
So this is hot off the presses. I don't know what day this is going to air, but today is the 28th of June here in our world, the magic of video recording. This is going to be sometime in July when you guys see this. So today on the Koha mailing list, this is one of those things that it was a combination of, I laughed when I read it, and I also thought, holy crap, that could happen to my library. And I'm glad it hasn't. So Victor Oliveira, and I'm not sure where Victor's from, sent out an email today saying, is it possible to add an instance or choose to add multiple copies simultaneously to a record? So he says in Koha, it's able to do that. Everybody probably that does cataloging probably knows that when you're adding items to a record, there's a button there that says add multiple copies. And if you get the whole thing set up for one, you put in a barcode number and then tell it you're adding 5 of those. When you scan that barcode number, it will actually add the one you're scanning plus 4 more. And it will give them sequential barcode numbers just to speed up the process of adding those items.
Right.
So Victor's question is there a way you can limit the number of additions you can add to an item? Because he had a staff member at his library that accidentally made a typo in that input box and added 800,000 copies to one bibliographic record. And of course, what happened is those got added, and then Koha tried to index them all, and then the server crashed. And then what he found is that after he got the server restarted, he had 800,000 items that he needed to delete, and he every time he tried to delete that many, it was too many for Koha to delete all at once. And he ended up having to delete them in batches of 5,000 each, which is not a good situation. It
No.
sounds like a lot of work just for a typo. So what I recommended on the list server was to open a bug in Bugzilla saying, there ought to be a limit. There ought to be a way, it'd be awesome if there was a system preference where you could set, what's the maximum number of copies that you can add just by pressing that button once. And then I said, but in the meantime, until that gets patched, we could add some jQuery to prevent that from happening. So let me actually show you what happens when you try and do this. So I'm on the koha-US demo, and I'm going to go to edit and edit items. And I've got one copy in here. This is Topeka School. It's a book that's in the test server, and it's all, there's one copy. And so let's make sure we get a collection code, and we'll give it a shelving location. We'll give it a date acquired. We'll give it a barcode number, one up from the one that was already in there. It's got an item type for book, and then add multiple copies. So this is where he had a staff member that put 800,000 in this box. Let's just do like 15.
How do you accidentally put in 800,000? That's what I
I don't know. When I was the circulation manager at my previous library that I worked at Latah County Library, we had at the Moscow Public Library, there's a cash register, and the most common overring in the cash register was $1,000. Now that sounds like a bad overring, and you wonder, how can somebody accidentally do an overring for $1,000? There were a lot of times when there were a lot of things that the library had for sale that it was $1. And so here's the way it works: is you walk up to the desk, somebody's standing there and they're helping check somebody out, and then somebody interrupts them and says, I just need to buy this thing, and hands them $1. So they lean over and they type 100, and then somebody asks them a question, and they turn their head over this way to answer the question, and they've still got the dollar in their hand. So they lean down and they type 100 and then push the button, and all of a sudden $1,000 overring, because they've hit 100 and then 100. You've got an overring. You've entered $1, and then you've entered another $1, and you end up with $1,000 overring. So the way that I fixed that is I programmed the cash register so that the maximum single sale that could be made on that cash register was $999.99, and that overring stopped happening. So did somebody type like 8 and then lean on the keypad? I don't know. I can totally picture situations where a typo like that can happen, because I've seen it happen so many times. So I'm not going to put in 800,000 because I don't want to crash the test server. But let's say maybe you wanted to put in 10 and you accidentally hit 101. I don't think it'd kill the test server if I put in 101. So you're about to add 101, continue. This will take a minute or so.
So he blew through the confirmation.
Yeah, apparently. Well, and we don't know what version they were running. I don't know if there's a confirmation on every version, but I just added 101 copies of this title to this bibliographic record.
Ugh.
So the jQuery that I wrote is pretty simple. And if you go to the Koha jQuery library and look for the one titled put limit on add multiple copies, it's really simple. I mean, it's
one line.
It's one line, yeah. And so I'm going to put it in the intranet user JS system preference. And all it's doing is it's saying, that number of copies input box has its own ID, number of copies, and it's on the cat add items page. So I've got, whenever that whenever you're on the cat add items page, whenever this number of copies input box is there, the first thing this jQuery does is it adds an attribute to the input box for a type called number. The max value attribute only works on an input box that has a type of number.
Right.
Because, if it's alphanumeric text, there's no max, doesn't work. So the first thing it does is it adds an attribute to that little input box called number. It makes the type of box number. And then the second thing it does is, just for the sake of having a number there, I said, in my libraries, there are very few situations where somebody's going to add more than 10 things to a bibliographic record at once. So I just put a max of 10. And so if I save that, and then let's go to another book by this same author, Ben Lerner, local Kansas authors. So if I go to edit and to edit items, now that I've got that jQuery on my system, I'm going to take that barcode, same barcode number, different barcode number. And it's got a collection code, it's got a shelving location. And it's got all the things I need to have in it to add it. And I'm going to click on add multiple items. If I try to add 11 and click add, I'm going to get this warning that says, please select a value that is no more than 10. So I can add 10, but I can't add 800,000. And so there are my 10. And if you have situations, like I said, I can't think of a situation where one of my libraries is going to add more than 10 items at once. But if you're maybe in a bigger library, maybe in a weird situation where you need to add 100 things, there's no reason you can't set that max value to like 10 or 50 or 100 or 200 or whatever you want it to be. You can use this. I can't
imagine adding more than a few hundred items to a record, because we have a record that has a couple hundred items on it because it's archived newspapers.
Yeah.
And we hit the limit on that, and I actually had to create a second record to house the rest of those items. So really that limit should be set by the restrictions of Koha in general.
Well, like I said, I don't know where Victor Oliveira is the person that submitted that email this morning. So I know that the Mark 21 standard, there's a size limit to the Mark record, but I don't know if that's true in other versions of Mark.
Yeah.
So maybe they're a Unimark library, or it's, if they're outside the US, if they're using a different version of Mark, they might not have the same limits that US Mark has.
I know that too, if you add too many items, the record just will not show. Sometimes you get some oddball results too,
Yeah.
But sometimes that record just will not show if it's got too much information in it.
Well, and I think if you add 800,000 to one item or to one record, that's gonna cause problems no matter what you do. So that's almost as many items on that one record as we have in our entire 50 library consortium. So
you changed your input box to type number, and in doing that, it does change the look of that box.
Yeah, it does,
with the little scroll bars on their arrows. There is a way to get around that if you don't like that. You could, instead of doing a type number and then the max number, you could try and input max length attribute. Then you can, I don't want any more than 2 digits. So it's or two
Yeah.
characters, that could limit it. You know, it's not as fine-tuned as this and doesn't give you that feedback the same way. But if you wanted to do that way, you could do it that way. So there are a couple different ways you could go about it, but your method makes a lot of sense and gives you good feedback. So
Yeah, and it actually gives you that warning when you try to put more than 10 in there. It says that this number must be lower than 10. And when you try to go over 11.
right.
So
Good solution and a quick turnaround to give him a safety net for the next time something like that occurs.
yeah, I hope so. I hope, like I said, I don't think it's ever happened to us. It's certainly, we've never had somebody add so many items to a record that crashed the system. But I could see that as a potential, so I immediately thought there ought to be a limit there. So, and it was nice that I knew. I had this on our server within 5 minutes, and then I had a message back to the listserv within 20. So
A fast response. So, all right. Well, George, thank you for that helpful tip, and hopefully people will put that into place because, man, I could see if you're an admin and knew about that bug and you were retiring, that might be a fun little prank, you know. I'm just going to add 800,000 items and say goodbye. Let them sort that out. No, that would be bad.
that'd be bad.
Yeah, so get that safety in place quickly before somebody retires. All right. Well,
See you later.
everybody again in 2 weeks.